Hi there. Tonight we step into the dim, earthy world of a medieval village, where you, a young woman, are preparing for one of the most challenging nights of your life, your wedding night. Imagine yourself standing inside a cramped, thatched cottage, the air heavy with the smell of damp wool and smoky tallow candles. Outside, the village murmurs with chatter, and you can't shake the sense that every whisper is about you. Your stomach twists as you adjust your rough linen shift, your best outfit, even though the elbows are patched. This isn't the romantic wedding imagined today. You likely won't get through it without a few uncomfortable moments that may stay with you for years. Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy the content. Comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's move into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the heart of your small village, a cluster of wattle and daub houses gathered along a rutted dirt path. It's late spring, and the air carries the light sweetness of blooming hawthorn, mixed with the constant smell from the nearby midden heap. Your wedding is tomorrow, and the village is alive with the kind of excitement that feels slightly chaotic. As you pull a bucket of water from the well, you catch bits of conversation. "She's marrying the miller's son. Lucky girl," one woman says, while another replies, "Lucky? He's got a temper and wandering eyes." You try to ignore them, but their words cling to you like damp straw. This isn't a private matter. Your wedding night is part of the village's entertainment, and you've become the center of attention. In medieval Europe, marriage was less about affection and more about survival, alliances, land, and labor. By the 13th century, the Catholic Church had strengthened its control over marriage, calling it a sacrament. That meant your wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a binding agreement. You aren't marrying for a ring or a curated aesthetic. You're linking your family's future with another's, and everyone is waiting to see whether the union will begin smoothly. A small detail to consider. Some villagers believed that if a bride tripped on her way to the church, she would have bad luck in marriage. So now you notice every small stone under your feet. Historians still debate whether this belief was widespread or only found in certain regions, but either way, you aren't willing to risk it. You pause at the well, the wooden bucket weighing down your arms, and glance at your reflection in the water. Your face is warm from the day's work. Milking the cow, kneading dough, and managing your mother's endless reminders about household duties. The village is tiny, maybe 200 people, and privacy simply doesn't exist. You share your cottage with your parents, 2 younger siblings, and a particularly irritable goat that regularly chews your straw bedding. The thought of your wedding night being private feels almost unrealistic. Nearby, you hear older women laughing about the bedding ceremony. Yes, that was real and just as intrusive as it sounds. They'll walk you to the marriage bed, and you're already bracing yourself for their crude jokes. The truth is, you're exhausted. You've been awake since dawn, and the sun has barely set. Your hands are calloused from spinning wool, and your back aches from hauling firewood. Yet the village expects you to appear as a glowing bride, composed and ready for a night based more on obligation than emotion. You can't help but smirk, thinking how modern people would react if their wedding involved displaying the bed sheets for public inspection. Spoiler: that part is coming, and it's far less charming than it sounds. For now, you walk back to the cottage, water sloshing as you go, trying to block out the village gossip. Some are already predicting whether you'll cry tomorrow or remain steady. When you enter the cottage, your mother is fussing around, assigning more tasks before the big day. She mutters about your modest dowry, a few chickens, a length of coarse cloth, and a wobbly stool your father carved. You're not nobility, and no one expects you to be. This isn't some grand Game of Thrones style union filled with gold or knights. You're a village commoner, and your marriage is a practical arrangement meant to hold the community's network of obligations together. Still, there's a small spark of curiosity mixed with your nerves. Maybe, just maybe, this new life won't be as bleak as the stories make it sound. But then a neighbor yells something about the groom's drinking habits, and your optimism fades. Welcome to medieval marriage, where the risks are high and even the wine isn't much help. You're back in your family's cottage, the air thick with the smell of boiled cabbage and hints of sweat-soaked wool. The weak fire pops in the hearth, throwing shaky shadows on the rough walls. You sit on a stool, trying to repair a tear in your shift while your mother goes on about the wedding tomorrow. Your thoughts, though, drift elsewhere, mainly to the fact that this marriage was arranged when you were barely old enough to chase chickens around the yard. You're not entering this union because of romance. You're here because an agreement was made long ago, and you're only now facing the results. The gossip from earlier in the day, the chatter at the well, still lingers in your mind. But now you're realizing how few choices you ever had. In medieval Europe, betrothals were often arranged when children were very young, sometimes even as infants, to secure alliances or property. By the 14th century, canon law required both people to give verbal consent at the altar. But realistically, refusing wasn't an option when your family depended on the match for survival. You're 16, maybe 17, and the miller's son, your soon-to-be husband, was chosen because his family owns a narrow piece of land next to yours. It isn't love, it's strategy. A curious detail: some betrothals involved a hand-fasting ritual, where the couple would clasp hands through a hole in a stone as a way of sealing the agreement. You didn't get such a ceremony, but the commitment still feels as heavy as any stone. Historians still debate whether hand-fasting was legally binding or mainly symbolic. For you, it changes nothing, you're committed either way. You place your needle aside, your fingers sore from mending, and look over at your younger sister lying on a pallet, unaware of the storm in your thoughts. She's fortunate. She still has a few years before her own arranged match appears. You, however, are staring at a future you didn't pick. Your mother keeps talking, saying the miller's son is sturdy enough, which in medieval terms basically means still alive. You almost laugh, joke number one. If sturdy is the best compliment, this will be an interesting marriage. The truth is, you've hardly spoken to him. He exists in your memory as a vague figure, dusty from work, with flour-covered hands, and known for little more than a grunt when you pass him at the market. The cottage door creaks open and your father steps inside, leaving muddy prints across the packed dirt floor. He's just returned from the alehouse where he's been negotiating with your groom's family, and his flushed face suggests the discussion wasn't entirely friendly. Arranged marriages like yours often involve tense bargaining. Land, tools, or even livestock could influence the final terms. You're not simply marrying a man. You're connecting two households, and every part of the deal had to be settled before the priest became involved. You catch your father muttering about the miller's low offer, and your stomach tightens. If the families are already arguing, what will your wedding night be like? You're not unaware of what lies ahead. You know the night isn't about romance or gentle words. It's about sealing the agreement, and the village expects proof. You rise, stretch your stiff back, and step outside for a breath. The cool night air meets you, and the stars scatter across the sky. The village is still alive. Laughter spills from the alehouse, a dog barks, and the blacksmith's hammer rings in the distance. This place rarely settles, and neither does your mind. You think about the stories you've heard, whispers about brides who cried through their wedding nights, or worse, those who didn't survive childbirth the next year. You're not sure what frightens you more, the night ahead or the years after it. Before you ever face him, your mother calls you back inside, her voice edged with impatience. She stands with a comb in hand, ready to battle the knots in your hair, as if that alone will turn you into a suitable bride. You sit, wincing as she works through the tangles, trying instead to focus on the fire's faint glow. The terms of your betrothal are already agreed upon, a few coins and your labor as a wife. You're not simply gaining a husband, you're giving up the last bit of freedom you held as a daughter. The church may call this a holy union, but to you, it feels more like an agreement drafted by someone else. Tomorrow, you'll walk to the church while the village watches every step. For now, you're just a girl in a small cottage, wondering how things came to this. You're back inside, the fire now fading to embers, and your mother's comb is still pulling at your hair. The air feels heavy, not only from the smoke but from the weight of what lies ahead. Yesterday's gossip in the village and last night's realization about your betrothal still sit on your chest like a stone. As dawn slips through the cracks in the shutters, you find yourself caught in the next issue of this medieval marriage process. The dowry. Your family has argued over it for weeks, and you're beginning to feel less like a bride and more like a bundle of goods being traded. You sit cross-legged on the floor, sorting through linens your mother insists must be included, while your father paces nearby, muttering about the miller's latest demands. In medieval Europe, a dowry was the bride's contribution to the marriage, usually practical items like cloth, pots, livestock, and occasionally land or coins. By the 13th century, it had become central to marriage negotiations, especially for families like yours, surviving in a village where even owning another goat counted as wealth. Your dowry isn't impressive. A few chickens, a patched blanket, and that unsteady stool. Your father keeps repeating an odd detail. Some dowries included bedding rights, promising the groom a share of your family's straw mattress, luxury by medieval standards. Historians still debate whether dowries gave women influence or simply reduced them to bargaining pieces. You're leaning toward the latter as your father snaps at you to fold the linens faster. You glance at the pile, your hands moving without thought. Each item feels like a part of your old life being traded away. The chickens, you raised them since childhood, listening to their morning clucks. The blanket, you helped your mother weave it during a winter so cold your fingers cracked. You're not just bringing things into this marriage. You're carrying your family's survival with you, and the miller's family knows it. You overhear your father complain about their request for another bushel of barley. You can't help but smirk. Joke number 1. If they're this picky about grain, imagine how they'll judge your cooking. The truth is, these negotiations are a struggle for control, and you're the reward. No one asked whether you wanted to be one. Your mother, noticing your drifting thoughts, hands you a small iron pot, another dowry item, and tells you to scrub it clean. You dip it into a bucket of cold water, the chill stinging your hands, and try to concentrate. Outside, the village is waking up. You hear a cart creak by, a sheep bleat, and the distant church bell calling for morning prayers. The dowry isn't just about you. It's about keeping the village's fragile balance steady. If your family offers too much, they'll go hungry by winter. If they offer too little, the miller might cancel the wedding, leaving you stuck, an unmarried girl at 17, which is practically a sentence in a world where marriage means safety. You pause, the pot dripping in your hands, and think about the groom. You've seen him at the mill, flour smudged across his face, but you don't actually know him. Is he gentle, harsh? Does he even want this marriage? Or is he obeying his father? The dowry makes you feel like part of a transaction, and you wonder if he feels the same. Joke number 2. Maybe you should have bargained for a better groom instead of another chicken. Your mother notices your frown and you hear her say you're fortunate to be getting married at all. Many girls end up with far worse. She isn't wrong. Yet the tight feeling in your stomach doesn't ease as you scrub the pot. Your father suddenly hits the table, startling your sister dozing near the fire. He's angry. The miller's family now wants a piece of your family's meadow, the same land your cows have grazed on for generations. You freeze, understanding this argument isn't about a few chickens anymore. That meadow keeps your household steady, and losing it could mean hard years ahead. You're not simply bringing a dowry into this marriage. You're carrying your family's future. If the deal fails, people in the village will talk, and you'll become the girl who couldn't finalize the match. You set the pot down with trembling hands and try to picture the wedding day. It's tomorrow, and the dowry is still unsettled. Welcome to the medieval marriage market, where love rarely plays a part. You stand outside the cottage now, the morning sun barely warming the damp air, while your mother pulls you toward a tub of lukewarm water behind a thin screen of woven branches. The dowry argument, yes, that same meadow your father nearly lost, remains unresolved. But the wedding is today, and there's no time to dwell on it. Your stomach twists, partly from nerves and partly from the thin porridge you swallowed at dawn. Now you're being scrubbed like a tarnished kettle, your mother's hands steady and unyielding with a coarse cloth. This marks the start of your bridal preparations, and the goal is not elegance, just making you respectable enough for the village's watchful eyes. You wince as she tugs your hair, muttering that you should have cared for it better. In medieval Europe, bridal preparations were practical, not luxurious, especially for peasants. By the 14th century, a bride was expected to look clean and modest, showing her family's decency. There's no spa treatment here, just a fast wash and a borrowed gown. A small detail. Some villages believed a bride's feet should be washed for good fertility. So your mother is splashing water on your toes with surprising enthusiasm. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or simply local. But you're too cold to think about that, you just want the washing to end. The water feels gritty, likely from the same well you carried buckets from yesterday. You shiver in your thin shift. Your mother hands you a dress, a hand-me-down from your cousin's wedding, dyed a faded blue that has definitely aged. It's the best your family can manage, and you appreciate the effort, but the wool is rough and heavy. You slip it on carefully, avoiding loose threads, and catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished copper plate your mother set up. You look acceptable, you guess, though the reflection feels like someone you don't quite know. Joke number 1. If this dress is meant to make you glow, you're ready to shine right back into bed. Still, the village expects you to appear the part, so you straighten your posture, even while your bare feet sink into the muddy ground. Around you, the air is full of noise. Neighbors calling out, children racing around, and cows being driven toward pasture. Your mother isn't finished, weaving a crown of wildflowers into your hair, the stems poking your scalp. She says it's tradition to keep away evil spirits, though you suspect it also hides the frayed hem of your dress. You start feeling like a character in a play you never asked to join. Your sister comes close, giggles, and says you resemble a saint from the church frescoes. You roll your eyes. Joke number 2. If saints had to wear this dress, they'd have rebelled much earlier. Her laughter helps, though. A small reminder of the life you're about to leave behind. Your mother steps back, studying you like a merchant evaluating a cart of turnips. She adjusts the flower crown and hands you a pair of old leather shoes, another dowry item your father reluctantly added. They're tight, but walking barefoot to the church is considered bad luck, and you already have enough omens to avoid. The village is fully awake now, and you catch bits of conversations floating through the air. Chatter filters through the screen. She's not bad-looking. A man comments while a woman adds, hope she's tougher than she looks. You clench your fists, wishing you could slip out of sight. This isn't just your wedding. It's the village's entertainment, and you're the centerpiece. When you step out from behind the screen, your mother immediately begins reciting instructions. Keep your head lowered. During the ceremony, don't stumble on the church steps. And please, don't contradict the priest. You nod, only half listening, your thoughts drifting toward the groom. You still haven't seen him today, and the uncertainty pulls at you. Will he be gentle, drunk, uninterested? The preparations are meant to steady you, but instead they're heightening your anxiety. Joke number 3. Maybe if you scrub hard enough, you can erase the entire wedding. For now, you follow your mother back to the cottage, your dress dragging in the dirt as the villagers' eyes track your every move. The church bells ring, signaling that there's no turning back. You trudge through the village, the itchy blue dress, your cousin's hand-me-down, clinging to your legs as you trail your mother toward the open field where the wedding feast is already slipping into disorder. The bells still echo faintly, but now they're drowned out by laughter, shouting, and the off-key wail of a fiddle. Your flower crown is already wilting, one petal drooping over your eyebrow, and your too tight shoes pinch with each step. The bridal preparations made you feel like a polished ornament, but now you're being pushed into the center of the village's rowdiest gathering. This communal feast is less about celebration and more about testing how much you can endure. In medieval Europe, wedding feasts mattered greatly, especially among peasants. They served as community bonding rituals and rare chances to eat something beyond stale bread. By the 14th century, these gatherings were usually held outdoors, with everyone contributing food or ale to reduce expenses. Your family managed a small spread, barley stew, roasted turnips, and a somewhat tough pig your uncle insists was slaughtered only yesterday. A small historical note. Some villagers believed spilling ale during the feast brought good luck, so you find yourself dodging sticky puddles as you move through the crowd. Scholars still debate whether this was a real belief or simply an excuse to drink carelessly, but the scene around you suggests the latter. You grip a wooden cup of watered-down ale your mother pushed into your hand, its bitter taste doing little to settle your nerves. The field is packed with faces. Neighbors, cousins, and strangers from nearby hamlets. Cheeks flushed and voices loud. You notice your father arguing with the miller, probably still disputing the meadow tied to your dowry. The groom is somewhere in this chaos, but you haven't spotted him, and part of you isn't eager to. You're meant to be the glowing bride, yet you feel more like livestock being guided toward a stall. Joke number 1. If this qualifies as a feast, you'd hate to witness their famine. A group of women, their aprons smeared with grease, tug you toward a shaky table loaded with food. They laugh, hand you a chunk of bread, and make crude remarks about needing strength for the wedding night. You blush, wishing you could disappear. The village's fixation on that night, the constant whispers at the well, is in full force, and their humor is as subtle as a cow in a chapel. You bite into the bread, dry and tough, and attempt a polite smile. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, sweat, and roasted meat. The fiddle player is now competing with a drunken piper, the noise making your head pound. You seize a moment to slip to the edge of the crowd and rest against a twisted oak tree. From here, you can see everything. Children chasing a stray dog, men arm wrestling over a barrel, women trading gossip in tight circles. This feast isn't really about you. It's the village showing its unity, proving it can still host a gathering even in difficult times. But it also reminds you how little privacy you truly have. You overhear a man wager a sack of oats that you'll do your duty tonight, and you tighten your grip on your cup. You clutch your cup tighter, tempted to toss it at him. That's joke number 2. Maybe you should have insisted on a dowry clause that guaranteed some silence. Your mother catches your eye and motions for you to return. Her expression is a mix of pride and mild frustration. She's in her element, moving between tables, checking that the stew never runs out. You're expected to mingle and act like the shy bride, but every step feels like wading through mud. You pass a group of young men. One winks and tells you you're lucky to land the miller's boy. You force a polite smile, though inside you're groaning. The groom is still mostly a mystery, and the feast's chaos only adds to your unease. You finally spot him across the field, surrounded by his brothers, laughing with a tankard in hand. He looks fine enough, you suppose, but your heart doesn't lift. It drops as someone pulls you back into the crowd. A villager pushes a slice of pork into your hand, and you chew it without thinking, the grease coating your fingers. The feast becomes a smear of sounds and familiar faces. You're counting the hours until you can slip away. But slip away to what? Next is the church ceremony, and after that, the bedding ritual you've been dreading. Joke number 3. If the feast is this rowdy, the wedding night might be its own spectacle. For now, you let the crowd move you along, the ale settling your nerves just enough to keep your feet going. You wander away from the feast, stomach stuffed with chewy pork and sour ale. The villagers' loud laughter still echoes behind you. The field, with its fiddler, spilled drinks, and non-stop commotion, shrinks in the distance as you're guided toward the church. Your flower crown is crooked, and your dress is dotted with stew stains. The air grows cooler as the sun sinks, stretching long shadows across the dirt path. Your mother grips your arm firmly, steering you like a stubborn goat, while your father trails behind, still muttering about the miller's steep dowry demands. The ceremony is about to begin, and you're preparing yourself for the priest's stern lecture, the one everyone claims will make your knees tremble. You're not sure whether it's the ale or the nerves, but your legs already feel unsure. In medieval Europe, the church had rigid control over marriage, especially after the 13th century, when it became a sacrament that bound you to your husband and to religious laws for life. The priest wasn't just there to bless the union. He was also expected to instruct you on your sacred duties, often in a tone harsh enough to sour milk. You're expected to stand at the altar, head lowered, and promise obedience, purity, and a future spent producing heirs. A curious detail: some priests sprinkled holy water on the bride to cleanse her of improper thoughts. Good luck with that, considering the feast's jokes. Historians still debate whether these rituals were meant to elevate the union or simply intimidate everyone involved. But as you reach the stone steps, intimidation is clearly in the lead. The church rises before you, its heavy wooden door groaning as villagers stream inside. Their muddy boots scuff the floor. You pause at the entrance where the air is thick with incense and damp stone. The priest, a thin man with a beard like tangled thorns, gives you a look that suggests he's witnessed far too many weddings gone wrong. He clutches a worn prayer book, its pages curling at the edges, and you can already imagine his low, gravelly voice speaking of sin. Your mother nudges you forward, whispering to keep your gaze down. Joke number 1. If you look up, you might end up challenging both God and the groom. You move toward the altar, the crowd's murmurs buzzing like flies. The priest begins speaking. His Latin blurs together, but you understand enough. Marriage is your duty, a sacred cage you're choosing to step into. He's not really addressing you, though. Most of his lecture is aimed at the groom, standing a few feet away, smelling faintly of flour and ale. You steal a glance. His face is flushed, his tunic wrinkled, but at least he hasn't run off. The priest shifts to warnings. No adultery, no defiance, and absolutely no skipping church. You bite your lip to hide a smile. Joke number 2. If missing church were a serious offense, half the village would be in trouble. You're given a ring, just a plain iron band, cold against your skin. It isn't meant to symbolize affection but authority, and the priest makes sure you understand that. He's now lecturing about Eve's downfall and how women must obey to avoid repeating it. You want to roll your eyes, but with everyone staring, and your mother watching you like a hawk, you resist. The church's message is unambiguous. Your body, your work, your future now belong to your husband. Your mind drifts back to the feast, remembering how the villagers' eyes followed your every move, and you realize the ceremony is simply another moment under their scrutiny. The priest's voice rises again, and you flinch as he sprinkles cold holy water on your head. Of course, it's freezing. The ceremony feels endless. Your feet throb in tight shoes, and the incense is making your head swim. Your groom mumbles his vows, nearly inaudible, and you repeat yours in a soft voice. Then comes the priest's final warning about the wedding night, calling it the marriage debt. The words make your stomach twist. Joke 3. If this is a debt, you'd honestly prefer owing the miller a sack of grain. The crowd cheers when the priest declares you married, but you feel confined rather than celebrated. Outside, the cool evening air offers some comfort, but the next ordeal is already looming. The bedding ceremony. For now, you hold on to the ring on your finger, unsure of what you've agreed to. You step out of the church, the priest's warning about that marriage debt still echoing like a dull bell. The air is crisp and cuts through the lingering mix of incense and sweat, but you barely have a moment to breathe. The villagers, half drunk from the feast, are already gathering around you, their cheers more raucous than respectful. Your new husband, still practically a stranger dusted with flour from his work, walks beside you, his shoulder brushing yours in an awkward rhythm. Your mother adjusts your drooping flower crown, but her gaze keeps shifting toward the path to the miller's house. That's where the bedding ceremony waits, and the thought makes your skin tighten. You're no longer just a bride, you're the centerpiece of a ritual about to become far too personal. In medieval Europe, bedding ceremonies were common among peasants, where relatives and neighbors escorted the couple to the marriage bed. By the 14th century, the practice was less about affection and more about proving the marriage was consummated to secure the alliance. Your dowry, meadow, and chickens included, depends on it. A curious detail. Some villages hung a sheet outside the next morning to confirm the bride's purity, a tradition as intrusive as it sounds. Historians still debate how widespread it was, but right now you're just hoping your village skips that part. The crowd's laughter makes it obvious they expect entertainment. You're being guided down the uneven path, your shoes pinching with each step. Torchlight flickers, throwing jagged shadows, and the air smells of burning pitch and spilled ale. The groom's mother, a stout woman with a harsh, crow-like voice, leads the group, shouting for everyone to keep pace. You catch her evaluating you as if deciding whether you were worth the barley her family demanded. Your own mother is whispering last-minute advice, something about keeping still and praying. but her words are drowned out by a group of men singing a crude song about a farmer and his plow. You blush, wishing you could run. Joke 1. If this is a plow song, you're ready to plant yourself in a different village. The miller's house appears ahead, its thatched roof sagging like a weary brow. You've visited before to fetch flour, but tonight it feels unfamiliar. The crowd tightens around you, their breath thick with ale and anticipation. You glance at your husband. He stares ahead, jaw clenched, and you wonder if he's as uneasy as you are. No one has asked what either of you wants. This ceremony exists for the village, not for you. It feels like you've stepped into a public trial, and you're the exhibit on display. You enter the dim, smoky house, the ceiling so low you have to stoop. The marriage bed, really just a straw mattress on a rickety frame, rests in the corner, covered with a worn blanket. People crowd inside, ignoring any idea of personal space. Your sister stands among them, eyes wide, clearly excited to witness something she's far too young to understand. The groom's brothers keep cracking jokes, one raising a jug of ale like a prized reward. You want to protest, but instead you manage a smile. Joke number 2. If putting on a cheerful face counts as a talent, you're ready for sainthood. The women begin chanting something about fertility, and you cling to the iron ring on your finger, its weight steadying you. The unspoken rules of the bedding ceremony are obvious. You and the groom are expected to get into bed while everyone watches, offering either praise or criticism depending on their mood. You can't decide what's worse, their presence or the pressure to act as expected. Your mother-in-law pushes a cup of spiced wine into your hands, insisting it will make things easier. You take a sip, the clove bitterness lingering, while a man in the back yells for the main event to start. Joke number 3. If this is the highlight, you'd rather fast forward to the ending. For now you stand still, the bed looming like a stage, with the entire village waiting for you to perform your role in this medieval display. You're standing inside the miller's home, the heavy smoke pressing against you like a thick cloak, and the bedding ceremony, the same intrusive crowd from moments before, is in full motion. The straw mattress in the corner, your supposed marriage bed, looks about as welcoming as wet hay. Your husband stands beside you, his breath sharp with ale, and the villagers pack the room tightly, torchlight flickering over the rough walls. Your flower crowns have vanished, likely crushed during the feast, and your dress now feels like a bundle of regrets. You hold the spiced wine your mother-in-law handed you, its warmth doing little to ease the chill in your chest. This is the bedchamber, and romance is nowhere in sight. It feels more like the stage for the village's most intrusive show. In medieval Europe, the wedding bedchamber wasn't a private retreat, especially for peasants, but a public checkpoint confirming alliances like your dowry of meadow and chickens. By the 14th century, couples were often escorted to bed in front of witnesses to validate the marriage, ensuring no attempt at annulment could undo the agreement. A curious detail: some bedchambers were scattered with herbs like lavender to encourage the couple, though the smell of unwashed villagers likely overpowered any pleasant scent. Historians still debate whether these herbs were for good fortune or simply to disguise the general odor, but you're too overwhelmed to notice anything beyond smoke and sweat. You take an uneasy step toward the bed, the crowd's chatter rising. Your mother-in-law shouts instructions, telling everyone to move aside, though no one responds. Your husband's brothers continue making jokes, one spilling ale as he toasts to a fruitful night. You suppress a gag. Joke number 1. If this counts as fruitful, you'd prefer planting turnips. Your mother stands near the door, her face a mix of worry and resignation, and you catch your sister's wide-eyed stare, absorbing the chaos like it's a festival. The bed frame creaks as someone, probably a drunken uncle, leans on it. You're painfully aware of every noise, every glance. Privacy doesn't exist here, and you're the evidence. You look to your husband, hoping for some shared understanding, but he's staring at the floor, fists tight. He's just as powerless as you are, and oddly, that brings a small sense of comfort. The priest's earlier words about duty and submission replay faintly, but they're drowned out by the crowd's crude remarks. Someone yells about warming the sheets, and you force another smile, though it feels like your face might split. The bedchamber is supposed to mark the moment the marriage becomes official, but right now it feels more like a judgment. One where you and end of provided transcript. You recognize the groom's reluctance. Thinking back to the feast, you remember how the villagers never stopped staring, and you realize this is simply the next part of their performance. Your mother-in-law grabs your arm, pulls you closer to the bed, and hands you a linen shift along with the dress meant for what comes next. You hold it tightly, dreading the moment you'll have to change in front of this crowd. The villagers have started chanting, a mix of prayers and crude remarks, and you're caught between laughing at the absurdity and wanting to scream. Joke number 2. If this counts as a prayer, then God is probably blocking his ears. The straw rustles as your husband sits down, the mattress sagging under his weight, and the crowd cheers as if he has just accomplished something heroic. You're meant to follow, but your feet feel glued to the floor. The spiced wine shakes in your hand, and the room grows hotter, packed with bodies and burning torches. You catch a faint herbal scent, maybe the lavender sprinkled on the bedding, but it's buried under the mix of ale and wool. Your mother-in-law urges you to hurry, and you realize there's no avoiding this. The bedchamber isn't a refuge. It's a checkpoint, and the villagers won't leave until they get what they came for. You think of the dowry, the church vows, every step that led to this moment, and wonder if you'll ever feel like anything more than a piece on someone else's board. Joke number 3. If this is the honeymoon, you're prepared for a very long nap. You take a steadying breath, step toward the bed, and brace yourself for whatever comes next in this medieval spectacle. You're in the miller's cramped bedchamber, the straw mattress, yes, the sagging, herb-dusted one, creaking under your husband's weight as he sits there looking as uneasy as you feel. The crowd is squeezed in tighter than a grain sack, torchlight flickering across the walls. The air is thick with the smell of ale, sweat, and a faint lavender scent that doesn't stand a chance. You're still clutching the thin linen shift your mother-in-law shoved into your hands, your fingers stiff around the cup of spiced wine. The bedding ceremony has reached its height, and every villager, from your giggling sister to the ale-soaked uncles, is watching you like it's their personal responsibility. Your dress feels restrictive, and the thought of getting into that bed under their collective gaze makes your stomach twist. In medieval Europe, bedding ceremonies existed to ensure the marriage was officially confirmed, often with witnesses staying long enough to be certain the couple fulfilled their duty. By the 14th century, it was less about romance and more about legal proof. Your dowry, your property, even that small meadow and those chickens all depend on this moment. A peculiar detail: some communities had a bedding song, a loud chant meant to encourage the couple. You cringe as the crowd starts slurring a version about plowing fields and sowing seeds. Historians still debate whether these songs were intended as blessings or simply to embarrass the newlyweds, but you're confident it's the second. As the lyrics grow even more suggestive, you force yourself to move, set the wine cup on a shaky stool, and hold the shift closer. Your mother-in-law is glaring with folded arms, as if your hesitation is an insult to her personally. The chanting grows louder, and you meet your husband's eye. He looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, which is strangely comforting. You're both stuck in this performance, pawns in the villagers' ritual. You think back to the priest's stern talk about marital obligation and wonder how anyone could feel anything but dread in this atmosphere. Joke number 1. If this is debt collection, you'd rather owe the miller a lifetime of flour. The women in the room, your mother, the groom's aunts, and a few nosy neighbors, start fussing around you, encouraging you to put on the shift. You glance at the bed, with its worn, lumpy blanket, and realize there's no hidden corner where you can change. You're expected to undress right here, with every eye fixed on you. Your cheeks burn, and you silently pray for a sudden storm to scatter everyone. But nothing changes. The torches keep burning, and the song reaches an especially crude line about ripe harvests. You fumble with the ties of your dress, your fingers stiff and trembling. Manage a weak smile. Joke number 2. If this is a harvest, then you're the turnip no one bothered to pick. Your mother steps forward, partly shielding you as you pull the dress over your head, the wool snagging on your hair. The thin shift is cold against your skin, leaving you feeling exposed. You fold your arms, wishing you could disappear. The crowd cheers louder as you appear, and someone calls out about a fine bride. You want to snap back, but instead your eyes go to the bed where your husband now lies, boots still on, looking like a man waiting for a tooth to be pulled. The bedding ceremony is supposed to symbolize unity, but it feels more like public humiliation, with you and the groom unwillingly taking center stage. You step toward the bed, the floorboards groaning, and the noise of the crowd rises again. Your sister remains perched on a barrel, eyes wide, no doubt memorizing every moment for later gossip. The men clap each other on the back, lifting overflowing tankards, while the women start another chant, something about babies and blessings. You climb onto the mattress, the straw crackling beneath you, and slip under the blanket, your pulse racing. Your husband shifts slightly, his elbow brushing yours, and both of you go still. With so many eyes watching, even breathing feels like part of a show. Joke number 3. If this is a performance, you're ready for the curtain to fall. The bedchamber is sweltering now. Heat from the torches and the packed bodies makes the air stifling. You stare at the ceiling's dark beams while the chants fade into a sloppy murmur. This is the moment the villagers have been waiting for, their proof that the alliance is sealed. Love and duty aren't on your mind. Survival under scrutiny is all you're thinking about. The formal ceremony may be ending, but the night is far from over, and you're already dreading what follows. You lie on the straw mattress, the rough blanket rubbing your skin through the thin shift, the same flimsy thing you had to change into under the crowd's gaze. The room is still crowded, though the rowdy chants have finally died down. Torchlight flickers dimly, and the air is thick with ale, sweat, and a trace of lavender that fools no one. Your husband lies beside you, his breath uneven, both of you stiff and painfully aware of the villagers lingering like unwanted spirits. The plowing field song has thankfully stopped, but people still haven't left. They whisper, hover, and wait for what, you're not sure. You long for privacy, even a moment to breathe, but in this village that's rarer than a warm bath in midwinter. In medieval Europe, privacy wasn't a right, it was a privilege. Weddings especially were community affairs. With the dowry, land, and even livestock involved, everyone felt they had a personal stake. By the 14th century, bedding ceremonies often lasted beyond simply escorting the couple to the bed. Some villagers stayed to make sure the newlyweds didn't slip away from their responsibilities. A curious detail: in some regions, couples were given a bridal ale to sip in bed, supposedly to calm nerves. You glance at the empty wine cup on the stool and wish someone would refill it. Historians still debate whether this ale was genuine comfort or just another excuse to keep watch over the couple. Judging by the nosy ant leaning over your blanket, you're guessing it was the latter. You shift slightly, the straw crackling, and your husband mutters something. Maybe a curse, maybe a prayer. You both feel trapped, the crowd's presence heavier than the priest's blessing. You think back to the church, the iron ring still cold on your finger, and wonder how you went from hauling well water to becoming tonight's entertainment. Your mother stands near the door, scolding a few drunks arguing over a lost wager. Yet she isn't leaving either. You want to shout for everyone to get out, but that would only feed tomorrow's gossip mill. Joke number 1. If privacy is a sin, this village must be holy indeed. The bedchamber walls seem to close in, the soot-darkened beams above pressing down as the noise continues to simmer around you. Lower than before, you spot your sister's silhouette. She's still sitting on that barrel, likely storing every embarrassing moment to tease you with later. The groom's mother bustles around, pretending to straighten things, but really just hovering, her eyes drifting toward the bed every few seconds. You're expected to complete the marriage now, yet the idea of being intimate with a stranger beneath these stairs feels absurd. You try to picture a place where you could close a door or pull a curtain, anything. But this is medieval life where privacy barely exists, and everyone feels entitled to your business. You tug the blanket higher, as if it could protect you from their expectations. In the corner, a man, some cousin of the groom, raises another toast, splashing ale and shouting about future heirs for the mill. The crowd howls and your face heats up. Your husband shifts, his elbow brushing yours, and you both recoil like you touched hot metal. You can't decide what's worse: The village's fixation on your fertility, or the fact that you're expected to make it happen with all of them practically watching? Joke number 2. If heirs are the priority, they might consider leaving the room first. You remember the feast, how every pair of eyes followed you, and realize this bedchamber is just another stage, with no curtain to hide behind. Your mother finally snaps at the crowd to give you both some space, but her voice lacks conviction. Only a few people shuffle out, their laughter echoing down the path. The room is still too full, the air too warm, and you count the minutes until you can at least pretend to sleep. You look at your husband, his face half lost in shadow, and wonder what's going through his mind. Does he despise this as much as you do? The priest's words about duty linger, but so does your desire for even a moment alone. Joke number 3. If solitude is treasure, you're the poorest bride in the village. For now, you lie still, the straw poking through the mattress, waiting for the remaining guests to drift away, knowing the real challenges of the night have yet to begin. You're still in the miller's bedchamber, the same prickly straw mattress digging into your back through the thin shift. The crowd is finally thinning, thankfully, with your mother-in-law's half-hearted shooing sending a few drunk guests stumbling into the dark. The torches burn low, stretching long shadows across the room, though the air remains thick with ale and the stubborn presence of those who refuse to leave. Your husband lies beside you, silent and rigid, his flour-dusted hands folded awkwardly atop the blanket. The chaos of the bedding ceremony is fading, but now you're face to face with him, your stranger of a groom, for the first time without people chanting about plows or heirs. You're alone, somewhat, and the sudden quiet makes your heart race faster than any bawdy song they sang earlier. In medieval Europe, marriages were often arranged, and meeting your spouse for the first time on the wedding day wasn't unusual, especially for peasants like you, whose families relied on land, labor, and livestock. By the 14th century, the church required mutual consent, but consent was flexible when your family's future, like that dowry meadow, depended on the match. A small historical note. Some brides received a token from the groom, such as a coin or a knife, to mark the union, but you're still clutching that iron ring. That's all you have. Historians still debate whether these tokens were affectionate gestures or simply practical symbols of a contract. But looking at your husband's unreadable expression, affection feels far away. You shift, the straw crunching, and steal another glance at him. He isn't unpleasant to look at. Broad shoulders, a jaw more stubborn than handsome, and eyes that keep avoiding yours. He's the miller's son, someone you've seen around, always dusted with flour like a walking ghost of the mill. But here, in this dim light, he feels like a stranger, and you're expected to build a life with him. You think back to the feast, the way you saw him laughing with his brothers, and wonder if that easy smile will ever be meant for you. Joke number 1. If he stays this quiet, you may be married to a sack of flour. The room is quieter now, though your mother still lingers by your provided text cuts off here. You're by the door, pretending to fuss with a basket of bread. Your sister is gone, likely taken off to bed, and the groom's mother is snoring in a corner, her watch defeated by too much ale. You're not actually alone. Real privacy is still out of reach, but this is close enough that every sound, the creak of wood, the shift of fabric, feels sharper. You clear your throat, thinking you should say something. But what? Nice wedding. Sorry about the bedding song? Your husband shifts beside you, his elbow brushing yours again, and both of you go still, like two startled barn cats. The silence feels heavier than the crowd ever did. You try to piece together what you know about him. He's around 20, works at the mill, and drinks too freely during festival season. The village gossip made that clear. But beyond that, kind or harsh, interested or indifferent, is he here because he wants this or because his father insisted, just as yours did? The priest's lecture about marriage debt drifts into your mind, and you push it away, unwilling to face that yet. You're still unsettled from the feast, the ceremony, the chaotic bedding ritual. Another joke to yourself. If marriage is a debt, you would rather bargain with a moneylender than navigate this with a stranger. You glance his way, searching for any sign of who he is, but he's staring upward, his jaw tight. The chamber is colder now, the torch is almost gone, and you pull the rough blanket closer. There's no comfort in it. You're supposed to be beginning a shared life, yet you feel like two castaways washed up on the same shore by accident. Your thoughts shift to the dowry, the vows, and every step that led here, and you wonder if he feels just as cornered. A distant dog barks, and the sharp sound makes you flinch. Then he finally speaks, voice low. "This is a lot." You nod, surprised by the honesty, and for the first time there's a faint connection. Another quiet joke to yourself. If a lot defines marriage, you're starting off almost poetically. For now, you lie there on the straw mattress, feeling each piece poke your back, waiting for the courage to face the night ahead. You're still on the same rough bedding, the room's chill slipping through the thin blanket. As the last of the bedding ceremony stragglers shuffle out, his words, "This is a lot," linger between you, forming a small bridge, even though you're both stiff and unsure. The torches are burned down to stubs, giving off a faint glow, and the room is quiet enough that you can hear an owl hooting somewhere outside. Your mother is gone. The groom's mother's snores have faded. For the first time, it's just you and this flower-dusted stranger you are now tied to. But the weight of the feast, the priest, the crowd staring, all press on you, making you question your role. You're not only a bride, you're part of a larger system, and you're not sure how much choice you really had in any of it. In medieval Europe, the idea of consent in marriage was complicated. By the 13th century, the church required both partners to agree at the altar. But agree often meant nodding under family pressure. Like your dowry, your meadow, and those chickens, binding you to the miller's son. Your decision was shaped less by preference and more by necessity. Refuse and you risk being seen as a burden or worse, abandoned. A small historical quirk. Some brides tried delaying consummation by claiming illness, an attempt to buy time, though it rarely succeeded. Once the bedding ceremony happened, historians still debate whether those delays were subtle resistance or simply desperate delays. But lying here now, you wonder if pushing back was ever truly possible. You shift, the straw crackling beneath you, and glance at him again. His face is half in shadow, eyes still fixed upward, but his earlier honesty gives you a trace of courage. You're meant to be his wife, but what does that mean when you hardly know him? You recall the priest speaking about submission, and a flicker of defiance rises. Did you choose any of this, or was every step chosen for you? Your family needed the match. The village needed the spectacle. But what about what you needed? You clear your throat, testing the silence. Did you want this? You ask, voice barely above a whisper. He tenses, and for a moment you wish you hadn't spoken. Joke number 1, cut off here just as everything hangs in the air. Silence becomes its own reply. You're married to a monk-like man. He turns his head slightly, meeting your eyes for the first time. "Not like I had a say either," he murmurs, his voice rough but not harsh. It isn't poetic, but it's honest, and it puts a small crack in the wall between you. You realize he's as trapped as you are, both pulled into the same net of family duty and village expectations. The bedchamber is cold, the air stale with smoke, yet that brief exchange feels like a thin lifeline. You think about the gossip at the well, how people claimed he was a drunk with a temper, and you wonder how much of it was ever true. Maybe he's questioning the rumors about you too. After all, you're the girl who nearly tripped on the church steps. The iron ring on your finger feels heavier now, a reminder of vows you muttered under pressure. Consent may have been required, but it felt more like a formality than a real decision. You think of your mother's frantic preparations, your father arguing over dowry, and realize they weren't just arranging a wedding. They were steering your entire future. You pull the blanket tighter, it's rough with scratching your chin, and try to imagine saying no at the altar. The village would have exploded with outrage, your family disgraced, and you marked forever as the spinster hauling water. Joke number 2. If consent were truly a choice, you would have chosen a nap. The mattress shifts as your husband rolls to his side, turning his back, leaving you staring at the dark beams above. You're not sure what you expected. Some dramatic refusal, maybe, but instead, this is your reality. Married, cornered, and stuck. The church's rules, the village's judgment, your family's needs. All of them have pushed you into this bed. You think of that illness loophole and smoke. Joke number 3. If you'd faked a cough, they probably would have prayed over you instead of letting you leave. For now, you lie still. The owl outside hoots, the only sound in the room, while you face the truth. You're in this marriage, willing or not, and the night is only beginning. You're still on the straw mattress, the room's damp chill wrapping around you despite the itchy blanket. Remember that frayed fabric pulled to your chin? Your husband remains turned away, his back a quiet barrier, after your whispered question about wanting this marriage and his blunt reply, "Not like I had a say either." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the soft crackle of a dying torch and that owl beyond the window. The bedding ceremony crowd is gone, but its weight hasn't left the room. Now another expectation presses onto you: fertility. The village, the church, your family. They're all counting on you to produce heirs, and the thought tightens your chest. You're not simply a wife. You're expected to be the miller's vessel for the next generation. The pressure sits on your ribs like a stone. In medieval Europe, having children was central to marriage, especially for peasants who needed heirs for labor and legacy, like securing that dowry meadow for another generation. By the 14th century, the church emphasized this even more, calling fertility a sacred duty. Childlessness often led to blame, usually directed at the wife's supposed sin or weakness. A strange little detail. Some villagers believe tying a red ribbon around a bride's waist on the wedding day increased fertility. You're almost certain your mother slipped one under your dress, though it's not helping your nerves now. Historians still debate whether these rituals came from genuine belief or were desperate attempts to control an unpredictable world where childbirth was always a risk. Lying here, though, you feel the pressure as something real and solid. You adjust your position, the straw poking at your side, and stare at the blackened ceiling beams. Your husband's breathing is steady, but your mind is wide awake. The priest's lecture about marriage debt wasn't just about intimacy. It was about producing children, plenty of them. You've heard village gossip. Women who don't conceive are whispered about, pitted, or worse, avoided. You think back to the feast, the women teasing you about having strength for tonight. You realize now their jokes weren't only jokes, they were measuring your chances. Joke number 1. If babies are the real goal, you'd rather be assigned to herd the village goats. His back is still turned toward you, tunic on, a smudge of flour dust on the shoulder. He's part of this moment, yet the pressure feels uneven. If you fail to produce an heir, the blame falls on you, not on him. You've seen it before. A neighbor cast aside, left to scrub floors while her husband found a mistress. The church may disapprove, but the village quietly accepts it if it leads to a son. You pull the blanket closer, it's rough, we've scraping your skin, and try to push away the image of becoming her. Your mother's voice echoes in your mind, her frantic advice about lying still now carrying a darker meaning. She wasn't preparing you for affection. She was preparing you to endure. The room is nearly pitch black now, the last torch only a faint ember. The quiet makes your thoughts louder. You think about childbirth, the danger it brings. So many women you know lost sisters and cousins to it. You've helped your mother tend to a laboring neighbor. You remember the blood, the screams, enough to make you shiver. Still, the village expects you to walk straight into that risk, and soon. Joke number 2. If fertility is considered a gift, it comes with a curse no one talks about. You wonder whether your husband is thinking about any of this or simply relieved the guests have finally gone home. His silence feels like a barrier, and you're unsure how to cross it. You turn onto your side, facing his back, and run your thumb over the iron ring on your finger. It represents vows, but also the heirs you're expected to produce. The red ribbon, the priests, prayers, the villagers' stares. They all feed the same system, pushing toward a single outcome. You think back to your earlier question about consent and realize this pressure is another choice you never truly had. Joke number 3. If heirs are currency, then you're the mint, and the village is ready to collect. For now, you lie still, the straw mattress under you a reminder of the hard life ahead, and try to settle your thoughts as the night drags on. You're still curled on the straw mattress, the dark room wrapping around you tighter than the scratchy blanket. You can feel every prickly thread. Your husband's back remains turned, his steady breaths forming a quiet wall between you. Even the owl outside has gone silent, leaving only the soft creaks of the settling house. The weight of those expectations, fertility, heirs, duty, still sits heavy, but now your mind catches on something else. The strange rituals and superstitions tied to this night. Your mother's hidden red ribbon was only one of many. This village is steeped in charms and old beliefs, each one meant to ensure luck, love, or at least a child by next harvest. You lie there half expecting some new superstition to appear, like a toad tucked under the pillow for good fortune. In medieval Europe, wedding nights were layered with these rituals, as communities clung to old customs to ward off misfortune or barrenness, things seen as signs of divine displeasure. By the 14th century, such traditions varied from place to place, some tied to the church, others far older. A curious detail: in some regions, brides received a fertility posy, a bundle of herbs, fennel, rue, and others, placed in the bed to warm the womb. Your mother-in-law slipped one under the mattress earlier, and you're fairly certain it's why the straw smells faintly of licorice. Historians still debate whether these posies were meant as symbols or truly believed to work. As you shift and catch another whiff, you have doubts. You roll onto your back, feeling the straw poking through your thin shift, and trace the iron ring once more. The ribbon, the posy, even the holy water the priest sprinkled on you. They're all part of the village's effort to control this night. You remember the feast earlier, how a neighbor tossed salt over her shoulder when you walked by, muttering about keeping spirits away. You laughed then, but in the darkness it seems less amusing. What if the charms fail? What if they succeed and you're pushed straight into the dangers of childbirth? You lie awake, not ready for another uncomfortable moment, especially with your mind tangled in all these rituals. You recall your mother's quiet warning before the bedding ceremony. Don't step onto the left side of the bed, or you'll curse the marriage. You'd laughed it off, yet still climbed in from the right just to be safe. The villagers take these beliefs seriously. Breadcrumbs under the bed for prosperity, a sprig of rosemary for loyalty, and you're stuck between dismissing them and worrying they might work. The bedchamber is cold, the air heavy with smoke, and you pull the blanket higher, its weave coarse against your cheek. You think back to the women at the feast, their teasing wrapped in superstition. One slipped a dried apple into your hand, claiming it would bring sweetness to your union. You ate it mostly to quiet her, but now you question whether each bite was some charm you unknowingly accepted. The church disapproves of many of these customs, calling them remnants of pagan practice. Yet the priest didn't react when your mother-in-law lit a candle to guide the angels. Joke number 2. If angels need candles, their eyesight must be terrible. You're not sure which weighs heavier, the church's strict rules or the village's charms. Both add pressure to an already tense night. The mattress shifts as your husband rolls onto his back, his arm brushing yours. You hold your breath. He's asleep, thankfully. His soft snoring is steady, leaving you alone with your thoughts. They drift again to the posy tucked under the bed. What if it's more than herbs? What if it's an old charm binding you more tightly to a life you never chose? You think about the dowry, the vows, the stares from the crowd, and now these rituals, each one tightening the net around you. Joke number 3. If charms truly brought good fortune, you'd trade them all for one night without expectations. For now, you stay still, the faint licorice scent lingering as you try to shake the feeling that the village's beliefs are watching you just as closely as its people did. You remain on the straw mattress, the darkness thick around you, the rough patched blanket offering barely any warmth. Your husband's gentle snores fill the stillness, surprisingly grounding after a day filled with superstitions, fertility bundles, red ribbons, and the ever-present scent of herbs beneath the bed. But now your thoughts shift toward the greater force shaping everything. The church. Its rules, stricter than any village charm, have dictated every part of this marriage. From the priest's stern lecture to the cold iron ring on your finger, you lie there staring into the unseen rafters and realize this night isn't just about you, your husband, or even the village. It's about the church's firm hold over your life and your vows. By the 13th century, the Catholic Church had fully established marriage as a sacrament, an unbreakable, sacred bond under God's authority. Your wedding wasn't merely an agreement between families, like that meadow in your dowry or those chickens. It was a spiritual contract, upheld by priests who believed they were guardians of salvation. One curious detail: some couples had to hang a cross above their marriage bed for sanctity. You're fairly sure your mother-in-law placed one somewhere in the room, though the dark hides it. Historians still debate whether such symbols were sincere acts of devotion or simply the Church's way of monitoring private life. Either way, you feel their weight like another layer of blankets. You shift, the straw rustling, and pull the rough blanket closer, its fibers scraping your chin. The Church's rules are the reason you're here in this bed with a man you barely know. The priest's voice echoes in your mind. Warnings about duty, debt, and producing heirs, all presented as obligations to God. You remember the ceremony, the holy water dripping down your hair as he looked at you like you might run. He wasn't wrong to worry. You would have, if the entire village hadn't been watching. You lie in the cold bedchamber, the last torch long extinguished, the memory of the church's stone walls and choking incense lingering in your mind. The priest's words echo. Your vows are eternal, and breaking them through adultery, defiance, or dishonor risks your soul. Stories of women excommunicated, cast out, and shaming their families cross your thoughts. The Church's authority feels heavier than village gossip or family pressure. You wonder if your husband feels it too, or if he sleeps through the fine print of divine law. Rolling onto your side, you face his shadowed form, his steady snoring uninterrupted. The Church doesn't just demand heirs. It demands obedience, especially from women. The priest's lecture about Eve's sin wasn't subtle. Women are the weaker vessel, meant to submit. Your hand clenches into a fist, the iron ring cutting into your skin. A spark of defiance flickers. You didn't choose this, not really, but the Church insists it's your path to salvation. If submission is holy, you'd rather be a sinner with a day off. Your thoughts drift to the fertility posy, holy water, and rituals where church and village law blend together. Where does God end and superstition begin? Your husband shifts, mumbling in his sleep, his arm flopping across the blanket. You freeze, half expecting him to wake, but he doesn't. In the quiet, your mind returns to the Church's role in your life. Sunday masses, confessions, sermons that always seem directed at women. This marriage is your new altar, and you are expected to kneel. You recall the dowry, the bedding ceremony, the village stairs, all filtered through the Church's lens of duty. If marriage is a sacrament, it comes with a lifetime of penance. For now, you lie on the straw mattress, the rough blanket barely keeping out the chill. Your husband's snores soften, and the quiet lets the Church's presence, those sacred vows, warnings of sin, sink deeper into your thoughts. But night also brings reality. You are no longer just a daughter. You are a woman expected to run a household, obey a husband, and uphold a web of gender roles as tight as the iron ring on your finger. In medieval Europe, marriage roles were rigid, especially for peasants. A wife's duties were practical and symbolic, sustaining family and village stability. By the 14th century, women were expected to manage the home, raise children, support their husband's work, and remain submissive under church and social law. Some wives wore a housewife's belt, a strap with keys and tools, as a badge of domestic authority. Historians debate whether it symbolized power or chained women to endless tasks. As you lie here, you lean toward the chain. You shift on the straw, staring into the dark. The bedchamber beams loom above, invisible but present. Church rules, Eve's sin, submission, heirs. Everything sets the stage, but the village's expectations weigh just as heavily. You are meant to cook, clean, spin wool, maintain the fire, feed your husband, and keep the mill's grain flowing. You recall the wedding feast, the women's knowing glances, their quiet jokes about strength needed for tonight. They weren't speaking only of that night. They were welcoming you to a lifetime of labor. Some days off. Your husband's arm twitches, and you notice his shadowed form. He is now the head of this household, at least according to the priest, but it's you who keeps everything running. You've seen your mother bargain with merchants, mend clothes, and chase chickens, while your father spent his days drinking at the alehouse. The village may call him the master, but she was the backbone. Now that responsibility falls to you. You pull the blanket tighter. It's rough, we've scratching your neck, and wonder how you'll manage. You're barely 17, and the thought of spinning enough wool to clothe a household, or worse, negotiating with the miller's own father, makes your head spin faster than a spindle. The silence of the bedchamber is broken by a distant creak. Perhaps the house settling. Perhaps a mouse. You think about the women in the village. Their hands rough from labor, their faces marked by worry. They are your future, but it doesn't feel inspiring. The church says your place is to serve, yet you've observed wives quietly guiding their husbands, like your mother coaxing your father to repair the roof. Perhaps there is a hidden power in this role beneath the daily toil. Joke number 2. If submission means running everything, you're about to become the village's sneakiest queen. You roll onto your side, the straw poking through your thin shift, and try to imagine your new life. The miller's house will be your domain. Its smoky hearth, drafty corners, and endless chores. You'll be judged by how well you maintain it, how quickly you produce heirs, how smoothly you fit into the village rhythm. The dowry, the bedding, the ceremony, the church's vows. They've all led you here, to a role that feels like a costume you're not ready to wear. Your husband's snores falter, then resume, and you wonder if he's prepared for his part either. Joke number 3. If marriage is a dance, you're both tripping over the steps. For now, you lie still, the weight of wifehood settling over you, bracing for morning when this role becomes real. You're still on the straw mattress. The bedchamber is cold, seeping through your thin shift. The scratchy blanket does little to warm you. Your husband's snores are steady now, blending with the creaks of the miller's house. The weight of your new role, wifehood, endless chores, village expectations, sits heavily on your shoulders. And now, the night's central challenge looms. The awkwardness of intimacy. The church's rules, the fertility posy under the bed, the crowd's bodily closeness. They've all led to this moment, where you are expected to consummate a marriage with a man you barely know. Your heart pounds, and the silence feels like a held breath, waiting for something to happen. In medieval Europe, consummation was the cornerstone of a marriage's validity, especially for peasants like you, whose unions, like the dowry meadow, were meant to secure alliances and heirs. By the 14th century, the church framed the marriage debt as mutual, but the pressure fell heavier on women, whose value was tied to fertility. A curious detail: some couples were given spiced posies or warm herb-infused drinks to stir the blood before the act. Mother-in-law's spiced wine likely served this purpose, though it left you more queasy than eager. Historians still debate whether these were true aphrodisiacs or placebo courage. But as you lie there, you wish for anything to ease the tension. You shift, the straw crunching under you, and glance at your husband's shadowed form. He's still asleep, arm flung across the blanket, oblivious to the storm in your mind. What are you supposed to do? Wake him? Wait. The priest's lecture about duty looms large, yet the reality feels like a chasm. You recall whispers from older women, vague advice about lying still or enduring, but nobody has explained how to navigate this with a man you barely know. Your thoughts drift to the bedding ceremony, those crude songs about plowing fields, and your face flushes. Joke number 1. If this is a field, you are not ready to be plowed. The bedchamber is dark. The last torch has long burned out. A faint scent of licorice from the posy hidden under the bed is all that remains of the village's rituals. You pull the rough blanket higher and try to steady your breathing. Your husband stirs, his snores faltering, and you freeze, silently hoping he stays asleep. The intimacy meant to connect you feels like a test you weren't prepared for. You recall your mother's red ribbon, the church's cross above, and wonder if they are meant to guide you or just remind you of what's at stake. The village expects heirs, the church expects duty, and you are caught in the middle without a script. Your husband rolls onto his back, His half-open eyes catch the faint moonlight slipping through a crack in the shutters. He murmurs something. Maybe your name, maybe a curse, and your heart races. You respond, realizing he can't see your whisper, "Yeah." The silence stretches awkwardly, like a misstep in a dance. You're both supposed to know what comes next, yet neither moves. Joke number 2. If this is a dance, you're both waiting for the music. You think of the spiced wine, the posi, all the rituals meant to ease the night, and wonder why they feel so ineffective. He shifts closer, brushing your arm. You flinch, not from fear, but uncertainty. He senses it and pauses, and for a moment you are grateful he does not push. The church frames this as duty, but lying here in the cold, creaky bed, it is hard to feel anything but exposed. Thoughts of the village's expectations, the dowries, the rituals drift through your mind. You realize this moment is just another step in their plan. Neither of you may be ready. He clears his throat and says, "We don't have to. Not tonight." It is a small mercy, and you exhale, the tension easing slightly. Joke number 3. If duties are debts, you are both filing for bankruptcy. For now, you lie still, the straw poking your back, letting the night's awkwardness settle into something almost bearable. You remain on the straw mattress, the chill of the chamber cutting through your thin shift. The scratchy blanket offers little comfort. His words linger, a rare kindness easing the pressure of intimacy you had dreaded. His snores resume, soft and steady, and the moonlight casts a pale glow across his flower-dusted shoulder. The night grows quieter, but your mind wanders from the bedchamber to the village outside. Even after the bedding ceremony, you feel their gaze, those same gossips from the feast. The church, the well-tracking, every villager watches. You are not just a wife. You are their story, unfolding before them. In medieval Europe, villages were close-knit, and a bride's life was public property, especially when marriages combined dowries, families, and land. By the 14th century, scrutiny did not end at the wedding. Neighbors looked for signs of success, heirs, harmony, or failure, weaving these into gossip. Some even appointed a bed monitor, an older woman who checked on newlyweds the next morning to report on their progress. You silently hope your mother-in-law isn't that dedicated, though her presence during the bedding ceremony suggests otherwise. Historians still debate whether these monitors were official or merely intrusive, but you feel their shadow as you lie there. You shift, the straw crunching beneath you, pulling the blanket tighter. Its rough weave scratches your chin as the village's obsession with your wedding night extends beyond this room. The fertility posi, the rituals, they are part of a broader performance. You imagine villagers huddled in the alehouse or in smoky cottages, betting on whether you will fulfill your duty or falter. You remember the well, the whispers about the miller's son, and wonder what they are saying about you. Are you the lucky girl or the one who will stumble? Joke number 1. If gossip were currency, the village would outshine a king. The bedchamber is dark, faint traces of licorice from the posi under the bed lingering in the air. Beyond the walls, you can almost hear the village hum. Dogs barking, a late-night cart creaking, neighbors murmuring who never truly sleep. You are no stranger to their scrutiny. You've lived with it your entire life. From spilling ale at the harvest festival to mending your shift in public, every misstep was noted. Now, as a wife, the stakes feel higher. They are watching for a swollen belly, a happy hearth, or any sign of cracks in your marriage. You think of your mother, how she navigates the village with her sharp tongue, and wonder if you will ever acquire her armor. Your husband shifts beside you, his arm brushing yours. You flinch, though he is still asleep. His earlier restraint, not insisting on intimacy, makes you wonder if he, too, senses the villager's eyes. He is the miller's son, expected to uphold his family's name while you maintain the home. You imagine the men at the feast, slapping his back, raising toasts about heirs for the mill. In this village, he is as much a puppet as you are. Number 2. If the village is a stage, you are both actors without rehearsal. You think of the church vows, the weight of the dowry, and realize that the community's gaze binds everything together. The mattress creaks as you roll onto your side, facing the rough plank walls. You already dread tomorrow. Stepping outside to face villagers' questions, subtle or not, about the night's events. Will they inspect the sheets like the stories say? Will your mother-in-law smirk or frown? The thought makes you want to remain in this uncomfortable bed forever. Number 3. If scrutiny were a sport, the village would win the crown for nosiness. For now, you lie still, straw poking your back, bracing for morning, when the community's watchful eyes will sharpen, judging your first steps as a wife. The bedchamber is cold. The scratchy, threadbare blanket barely shields against the chill. Your husband snores faintly, his arms sprawled across the blanket, and the night's quiet feels like a fragile truce. The villagers' eyes, the gossips from the feast, the well, the bedding ceremony, they all linger in your thoughts. Their scrutiny is a constant hum you cannot escape. Now, as dawn approaches, a new reality rises. Morning after a sleepless night, your eyes gritty. You dread stepping outside to face the villagers' questions, smirks, and probing comments about what happened in this medieval bed. In the 14th century, the morning after a wedding was a public affair, especially for peasants whose marriages sealed alliances like the dowry meadow. Villagers often gathered to inspect the couple, sometimes even the sheets, to confirm the marriage was consummated and the bride pure. A small, curious detail. In some communities, the bride was expected to serve breakfast to her in-laws as her first act, testing her domestic skills under their hawk-like gaze. You hope your mother-in-law is too hungover to demand pancakes, but last night's hovering suggests otherwise. Historians debate whether these breakfasts were genuine rituals of welcome or just another way to judge the bride. You brace for the worst. You shift again, straw crunching beneath you, staring at the unseen ceiling beams. The chamber is dark, but faint gray light seeps through the shutters, signaling morning. Thoughts of the bedding ceremony, the chants about heirs, remind you the village is not done with you. They will wait outside the miller's house, at the well, in the market, for any sign of success or scandal. Did you fulfill your duty? Is the miller's son pleased? You can already hear whispers. She looked pale? Or did she smile? Poor thing. Number 1, again. If gossip were a harvest, the village is reaping a bumper crop today. Your husband, you stir, your snores faltering, and you glance at his shadowed form. Last night, his restraint in not pushing for intimacy was a quiet relief, but also a secret you both now carry. If the village suspects the marriage wasn't consummated, the gossip will be merciless. You've heard stories of brides shamed for far less, their families dragged through mud. The church's rules, the fertility posy, the dowry, all weigh heavily on this moment. And this morning is your first true test as a wife. You pull the blanket tighter, its rough weave pressing against your skin, and try to imagine facing the villagers. Your mother is probably already awake, ready to fend off questions, but ultimately, you will face them and the bedchambers. The silence breaks with a sharp, unwelcome crow from a rooster outside. Your thoughts drift to your mother-in-law, her eagle-eyed scrutiny during the bedding ceremony, and you wonder if she will soon appear at the door, expecting proof of something. You've heard the horror stories of sheets paraded through the village, proof of maidenhood, and you silently hope your village is less barbaric. Even without sheets, the women will watch you, read your expressions, and note every movement. You think ahead to the feast, where women tease about strength, and realize they are your judges now, dissecting your every gesture. If scrutiny were a game, you'd be the village's favorite spectacle. Your husband shifts onto his side, eyes half open, and murmurs, "Morning already." You nod, throat tight. He rubs his face, the flour still smudged on his jaw. He doesn't say more, but his quiet feels less hostile, like you are both bracing for the same storm. You're meant to step forward as a united couple, but instead, you feel like strangers in a play with no lines. The church says you are one flesh now, yet the village demands proof, and you are unsure how to provide it. If marriage is a performance, you're both missing your cues. For now, you lie still, the straw mattress poking your back, bracing for the villager's gaze, already sharpening outside. The bed chambers are cold, the rough blanket pressing against your skin. Gray light seeps through the shutters, slowly brightening, joined by the chorus of morning sounds. Roosters, cartwheels, dogs barking. Your husband stirs again, smudged flour on his jaw catching the dim light as he murmurs about the morning. The scrutiny you've dreaded is imminent. Those village eyes, ready to judge your every move, loom closer. Yet a new reality emerges. Household duties. You are no longer just a bride. You are now the mistress of the miller's house. The endless tasks of a medieval wife are about to descend on you like a bucket of cold water. In medieval Europe, a wife's role formed the backbone of a household. For peasants like you, managing home tasks, cooking, cleaning, spinning wool, was as vital as tending the miller's grain. By the 14th century, a new bride was expected to take on these duties immediately, proving her worth to her husband's family and the village, all while navigating alliances tied to her dowry. Some brides received a household charm, a carved wooden spoon or token, for luck. Your mother-in-law left one on the hearth, and you already dread the symbolic weight. Historians debate whether such charms were tokens of support or reminders of responsibility. You lean toward the latter as your eyes scan the smoky hearth across the room. You shift on the straw, crunching beneath you, and sit up, the blanket slipping to your waist. The bed chambers are cold, the air thick with the remnants of torch smoke. You hear your mother-in-law's footsteps outside the door, heavy and purposeful. She likely expects you to stoke the fire, tend dough, or at least appear competent. Your mind drifts back to your mother's frantic preparations, her fussing over your dress, her whispered advice, and you realize she was preparing you for this moment all along. Moment, not the wedding night. You are meant to take charge of this house, its drafty corners and scarce provisions, while the village watches for any mistake. Joke number 1. If managing a home is an art, you are still sketching stick figures. Your husband swings his legs off the bed, the frame creaking, and pulls on his boots, silent but calmer than last night. You wonder if he expects you to leap up and start preparing porridge like the perfect wife the priest described. You have helped your mother with chores all your life, milking cows, mending clothes, but this is different. This is your half now, your responsibility. And the miller's family will judge you by how well you manage it. Your eyes fall on the wooden spoon on the hearth, its carved handle glinting in the dawn, and a pang of dread hits. You are not ready to be your mother, not yet, but the village does not care. The floorboards are icy under your bare feet, and you pull the thin shift closer, longing for your old dress, itchy as it was. The bedchamber is scattered, messy cups from the bedding ceremony, a wilted flower from your crown. You feel an urge to tidy it, if only to delay facing the world outside. You think of the morning after gossip, the women at the well dissecting every move, and realize your household duties are your first public test. If the fire dies, if the bread is too tough, the village will know by noon. Joke number 2. If chores are a stage, you are performing for the nosiest audience in Christendom. Your husband clears his throat, glancing at you as he ties his belt. You need help with the fire, he asks, gruff but not unkind. A small gesture surprises you, given the church's emphasis on his authority. You shake your head, muttering you will manage, though you are unsure. The dowry, the vows, the bedding ceremony, they have all led to this moment, where your worth as a wife is measured by a swept floor and a warm hearth. Joke number 3. If a tidy home is salvation, you are praying for a miracle. You step toward the hearth, the wooden spoon looming like a scepter, bracing for the day's work, knowing the villagers' eyes are already waiting. You kneel by the hearth in the miller's bedchamber, the cold floorboards biting your bare feet. The thin shift offers little against the morning chill. The straw mattress behind you, still rumpled from the night, feels like a distant memory as you face the smoky hearth and that carved spoon, your household charm. Your husband continues lacing his boots, his offer to help with the fire lingering. Yet you fumble with flint and kindling, determined to prove yourself. The villagers' scrutiny, the gossips ready to judge, looms over your first day as a wife. But a darker fear creeps in. Pregnancy, the church's push for heirs, the fertility posy, the bedding ceremony. All have pointed to this, and the thought of childbirth's deadly risks makes your hands tremble as you strike flint. Pregnancy is both blessing and burden, especially for peasant women like you, whose value is tied to producing heirs to work the land, much like the dowry meadow. By the 14th century, childbirth was a leading cause of death, with up to 1 in 5 women not surviving, often due to infection or hemorrhage. A quirky detail: some midwives used birthing charms, such as tying a saint's relic to the mother's thigh, to ease labor. Skeptical as you are, seeing your neighbor's ordeals makes it hard to believe any charm could truly help. Historians still debate whether these charms offered comfort or mere hope. As you coax a spark into the kindling, you pray for anything to keep that fate at bay. The fire catches, a weak flame licking the twigs. You sit back on your heels, feeling the smoky warmth, a small victory. Thoughts return to the bedding ceremony, the women's jokes about fruitful nights. They were not merely teasing. They were warning you. Pregnancy is not just expected. It is demanded by the church, the village, even your new in-laws. You have seen the aftermath. Your cousin, pale and trembling after a stillbirth, or the neighbor who never woke up. The fears coil in your stomach, tighter than the iron ring on your finger. Joke number 1. If heirs are a gift, you'd rather receive a basket of apples. Your husband stretches and glances at you by the hearth. Fire's going, he says, almost as a compliment. You nod, too absorbed in your thoughts to respond. He is part of the pressure to produce a son for the millbutt, but the risks are yours alone. You recall last night, grateful he did not insist on intimacy, and wonder if he understands the dangers you face. The church declares childbirth your duty, but it feels like rolling the dice with your life. You add a log to the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes, and push away the image of blood on straw, a scene all too familiar in this village. The bedchamber brightens with dawn spilling through the shutters. You hear your mother-in-law calling for someone to fetch water, and you know she'll soon expect you to start the day's chores. Bread, laundry, perhaps that breakfast ritual to prove your value. Yet the shadow of pregnancy weighs heavier than any task. You think of the fertility posy, the red ribbon, and all the village charms, wondering if they protect you or simply ensure a successful birth. Joke number 2. If charms could ward off danger, you'd need a sackful for what's ahead. Brushing ash from your hands, you feel the weight of the future child. A family, a life you may not survive. Your husband moves toward the door, muttering about checking the mill, leaving you alone with the fire. Outside, the village stirs. Children shouting, a cart rumbling. And you know they are already whispering about you, the new bride, questioning if you are with child yet. Church vows, dowry obligations, and village scrutiny push you toward motherhood. But the fear of its cost is yours alone. Joke number 3. If pregnancies erased worry, you're not sure you'd want to run. You turn back to the hearth, the wooden spoon gleaming like a silent judge, bracing for the day, knowing the specter of childbirth will follow you. The weak fire casts a faint warmth across the bedchamber. The cold floorboards and tangled straw mattress remind you of your sleepless night. The scratchy blanket lies crumpled, and your thin shift clings to your skin, offering no defense against the morning chill. The carved wooden spoon looms, a quiet symbol of your new duties. Your husband is gone, leaving you alone with the crackling fire and the knot of pregnancy fears. But now, with your mother-in-law's footsteps approaching, another reality comes into focus: your husband's authority. The church declares him head of the household, and you are expected to obey, whether he is kind or harsh. In medieval Europe, a husband's authority was absolute, particularly in peasant households, where his word, backed by church and custom, controlled everything from land to labor, including the dowry meadow. By the 14th century, church teachings described men as the head and women as the heart, a poetic way to say obedience was expected without question. A curious detail: some husbands gave wives a small rule token, like a staff, to symbolize shared governance. Often, this was more symbolic than real, and your mother-in-law's glare suggests no such token is coming your way. Historians debate whether these tokens represented genuine partnership or a veneer over male dominance. As you poke the fire, you prepare for the latter. The door slams open, and your mother-in-law stomps in, apron dusted with flour. The fire flickers weakly. She surveys your handiwork, snapping judgment, and you bite back a retort, knowing she is testing you. You recall the bedding ceremony, her hawk-like stare, and realize she is not judging chores alone. She is assessing how well you will submit to her son. Your husband's authority is more than rules. It is expectation, control, and the structure within which you must navigate your life. It's his now, and yours only in the sense that the law allows until you prove yourself. You add another log to the fire, watching the sparks dance, and feel the weight of his presence settle over you. He is the miller's son, the man who will decide when you eat, sleep, or speak, and yet you barely know him. Joke number 1. If he is the head, you hope for a gentle rain. You glance at the dim corners of the bedchamber. Ale cups from the night before still lie scattered, and you wonder what kind of husband he might be. Village gossip hints at a quick temper, but his restraint last night, choosing not to push for intimacy, offers a small flicker of hope. Still, the church's rules are clear. He is your Lord now, and defiance could bring punishment, or worse, shame that spreads to your family. You have seen wives with bruised arms, eyes lowered in submission, and the memory makes your hands tremble as you sweep ash from the hearth. You think of your mother, how she influences your father with a sharp word, and wonder if you will ever learn that skill. Your mother-in-law hovers, muttering about bread that should have been started. You nod and reach for a sack of coarse flour, likely from your husband's mill, and begin measuring it. Your fingers are clumsy. His authority extends even here. If the bread fails, it will be your fault, but he will bear the blame for a poorly run house. You think about the dowry, the church vows, the villagers' watchful eyes, all reinforcing his power over you. Yet last night he seemed as trapped as you, caught in the same game. Joke number 2. If he is king, you are both in the same checkmate. The fire burns stronger, now warming your face, but the bedchamber feels smaller, walls closing in under the weight of his presence. A shout outside, maybe him, maybe a neighbor, makes you flinch, half expecting orders. The church says you are one flesh, but he holds the voice. You knead the dough, sinking your hands into its stickiness, imagining a life where his authority does not feel like a yoke. Joke number 3. If obedience is a virtue, you may be the least virtuous wife in the village. For now, you focus on the bread, the wooden spoon, your only ally, and prepare for his return, knowing his word will shape the day. The hearth radiates warmth, a faint shield against the morning chill. The thin shift sticks to your skin as you work. The straw mattress in the corner is a distant memory, its scratchy blanket discarded, while the carved wooden spoon watches like a stern overseer. Your mother-in-law has gone, but her parting jab about the bread still stings. Your husband's authority, backed by the church, looms as you shape the dough. Outside, the village hums, and you think of the women who came before, their advice offering a lifeline. Their voices, from feasts to your mother's whispers, echo in your mind, giving guidance on surviving this new life as a wife in medieval Europe. Experienced wives were invaluable resources, passing down practical and emotional wisdom in a world where marriage, like your dowry, was a high-stakes contract. By the 14th century, women shared knowledge through informal networks, from wellsides to market stalls, teaching new brides how to manage chores, husbands, and village gossip. Some even gave small bundles of herbs or thread as tokens of sisterhood and practical support. Your mother slipped one into your hand yesterday. It rests in your shift now, faintly scented with thyme. Historians still debate whether these bundles were practical or symbolic, but for now, they offer reassurance. The dough sticks to your fingers, and you scrape it off, feeling the fire's heat on your face. You recall the feast, the knowing looks of women pressing bread or apples into your hands, their advice lingering. Keep the hearth warm, but do not let it burn. You stir the stew, forcing a small smile even when he's wrong. Your mother's voice echoes in your memory, warning you to bend like a reed under your husband's authority. She has navigated your father's moods for years, and now you recognize the quiet strength she carried all along. Joke number 1. If bending were a skill, your mother would be the village champion. You glance toward the bedchamber door, half expecting your mother-in-law to return. But the room is quiet except for the village's mournful bustle, the children shouting, a cow lowing. Your mind drifts to your neighbor, Agnes, a wiry woman whose laugh sounds like a crow. At the well last week, she cornered you with advice. Don't argue in public. Whisper in private. Her husbands are often drunk. Yet she keeps her home clean and her children fed. Her guidance feels like a map, though you're unsure if you can follow it. Adding flour to the dough, your hands steadier now. You wonder how many brides before you leaned on the wisdom of women to survive. The fire spits a spark onto the floor, and you stamp it out, your bare feet cold against the boards. You think of the bride's bundle hidden under your shift, a reminder of the women rooting for you, even if their advice carries scrutiny. Agnes also warned about the villagers' gossip. Watchful eyes judging your bread, your body, your marriage. You begin to see the balance. Take their wisdom but guard your heart. Joke number 2. If advice were a stew, you'd be drowning in everyone's secret ingredients. You shape the dough into a loaf, your hands finding rhythm, feeling a spark of confidence fueled by their words. Your husband is still at the mill, his authority looming, but the women's council, your mother's, Agnes, even the teasing of the feasts, offers a small measure of agency. You think of the dowry, the church vows, the bedding ceremony, all pressing you into this role. Yet these women show you ways to carve out space within it. You set the loaf by the fire to rise, the wooden spoon catching the light like a quiet nod of approval. Joke number 3. If surviving marriage is a craft, you're apprenticing with the best. For now, you wipe your hands on your shift, feeling the lingering warmth of the hearth, and brace for the day. The village women's wisdom is your quiet armor against what is to come. You remain by the hearth, the smoky warmth of the bedchamber mingling with the scent of rising dough. That loaf, shaped by guidance and care, sits near you. The straw mattress in the corner is a fading memory, its scratchy blanket discarded, the thin shift clinging to your skin as you wipe flour from your hands. The carved wooden spoon glimmers quietly, while the bride's bundle tucked into your shift offers a faint sense of grounding. The words of your mother and Agnes have given you a spark of strength. But now, as the village mourning grows louder outside, your thoughts drift to something softer. Love. The church, the dowry, the bedding ceremony, everything has been about duty. Could affection, perhaps even a slow spark, develop with this flower-dusted stranger you call your husband? In medieval Europe, love in marriage was often an afterthought, especially for peasants whose unions were forged for survival, not sentiment. By the 14th century, the church framed marriage as a sacred duty, with love considered a bonus, not a requirement. Troubadour tales of courtly romance trickled into village gossip, planting small dreams of something more. A small curiosity. Some couples exchanged love tokens, a braided cord or polished stone, as private gestures of hope. Your mother mentioned your father once gave her one, though you've seen little sign of it in their bickering. Historians debate whether these tokens were common among peasants or merely noble fantasies. Yet as you poke the fire, you wonder if love could bloom here, in this miller's house. The fire crackles, its heat warming your face, and you glance again at the bedchamber door, half expecting your husband's return. You remember last night, his quiet mercy in not pressing for intimacy, and his soft, muttered words. This, you feel a flicker of possibility. He's not a charming minstrel, but there's a rough honesty in him that isn't unpleasant. You've seen village couples, like Agnes and her drunken husband, who share a weary affection forged through years of hardship. Could that one day be you? Joke 1. If love is a crop in rocky soil, you turn back to your bread dough, checking its rise, letting the yeasty smell anchor you. The church preaches obedience as love, but your mother's flexible wisdom hinted at something different, a subtle dance of compromise. You recall your husband offering to help with the fire, a small break in his church-given authority, and wonder if it might mean something. Love, if it comes, won't strike suddenly. It will be gradual, like snow melting under a spring sun. You consider the bedding ceremonies, the village stairs, the chaos, and realize that these pressures could bind you together, if only through shared survival. You imagine a day when you might laugh over the memory of that terrible plowing song. Morning light now spills through the shutters, and your mother-in-law haggles outside. You remain wary of her judgment, your bread, your chores, but the thought of love, however distant, softens the day. You think about the bride's bundle, a gift from women who've walked this path, and wonder if they found love too. Perhaps your mother did, in her own way, despite your father's complaints. Joke 2. If love is a recipe, maybe you're missing half the ingredients, but you'll stir anyway. Your husband's boots thud outside, and your heart skips. He enters, flour smudged on his cheek, nods at the dough, and murmurs that it smells good. It's not poetry, but it's something. You nod back, a tiny spark flickering. The church, the village, the dowry, they shaped this marriage, but any love that grows will be yours to cultivate. Joke 3. If affection is a seed, you're both poor gardeners, yet willing to try. You return to the hearth, the loaf rising steadily, letting the possibility of a slow spark settle in your chest as the day's work continues. By the hearth, the bedchamber's warm and smoky, mingling with the bread's yeasty scent. You remember shaping the dough guided by village women's advice. The straw mattress in the corner is a faint echo. The scratchy blanket is forgotten, and your thin shift clings to your skin as you brush flour from your hands. The carved wooden spoon stands sentinel, while the bride's bundle offers a faintly reassuring scent. Your husband's brief visit, his gruff approval of the bread, leaves a spark of hope for love's slow growth. Yet, as morning floods the room, a grim truth presses in. Annulment, escape from this marriage with its dowry, meadow, and church vows, is almost impossible. The thought tightens your chest like a corset. By the 14th century, annulments were rare and complex, mostly granted for non-consummation, fraud, or pre-existing vows. The process was costly, scrutinized, and often trapped women in their marriages. Some brides even claimed bewitchment to void their marriage, blaming spells for their husband's failure, though priests rarely believed it. Historians debate whether such claims were sincere or clever manipulation. As you poke the fire, you wonder if any escape, magical or legal, could free you from the miller's house. The fire crackles, stinging your knuckles, and you glance at the bedchamber door where your husband's boots last thudded. His mercy last night, by not pressing intimacy, spared you from the marriage debt, but it also means the marriage isn't fully sealed, a technicality that might, in theory, leave a door ajar. You reflect on the bedding ceremonies and the possibilities they might still hold. During the ceremony, you realize that failing to consummate the marriage would be a scandal, bringing shame to both your family and his. You would be the girl who could not fulfill her duty, sent back to your parents' cottage as a lifelong burden. Joke number 1. If annulment is the key, it is locked in a chest you'll never open. You turn to the loaf of bread, its surface taut and ready for the fire's heat, and press your hands into its warmth one last time. The church's rules are strict. Once you said, "I do," backed by your dowry and vows, there is no turning back. You've heard of noble women purchasing annulments with gold, but as a peasant with only a few chickens, such ideas remain fantasy. You recall your mother's advice to bend like a reed, realizing she prepared you for a life with no escape. Even if your husband is harsh, the village and church expect endurance, not flight. Flower petals dust your shift like snow, the bedchamber now brighter, the shutters glowing with full morning light. Outside, your mother-in-law's sharp voice calls for wood, and you dread her return. Her eyes will scrutinize the bread and your face for signs of failure or success. Annulment may seem like freedom, but it is a trap. You would lose your place, your family's honor, and any future in this village. You think of women's advice, Agnes' warning to negotiate quietly with your husband, and wonder if negotiation, not escape, is your only path. Joke number 2. If annulments are a road, it is blocked by the entire village and their pitchforks. Your husband's mercy last night, his quiet "we don't have to," was a kindness but also a risk. If discovered, the village would gossip, the priest might pry, and your mother-in-law would never forget. You slide the loaf into the embers, feeling its heat scorch your fingers, sensing the weight of a life you cannot undo. The dowry, the bedding ceremony, the church's authority. They have bound you, leaving love's slow spark as your only hope. Joke number 3. If marriage is a cage, you must learn to decorate it, not break it. For now, you watch the bread bake, steadying yourself, bracing for the day, knowing the dream of escape is unaffordable. By the hearth, the smoky warmth wraps around you as the loaf turns golden. The dough, shaped by women's advice, holds the faint memory of the straw mattress in the corner, its scratchy blanket long forgotten. Your thin shift clings to flour-dusted skin, the carved wooden spoon on the hearth a quiet guardian, and the bride's bundle scent offers subtle reassurance. The impossibility of annulment, enforced by church rules and village scrutiny, weighs heavily. But as morning light floods the shutters, you turn to faith. The church's authority, which shaped your vows and fears, also becomes your anchor, a way to endure marriage and its demands. In medieval Europe, faith was the pulse of daily life, especially for peasants, whose existence, from dowry meadows to childbirth, was governed by God's will. By the 14th century, the Catholic Church provided not only spiritual guidance but a framework for enduring hardship, offering prayers and rituals to navigate marriage and daily trials. Some wives kept prayer cords, strings of beads tucked into aprons to count devotions for a harmonious home. Mothers received them, and you imagine hers is being used for you now. Historians debate whether these cords reflected personal devotion or just another church expectation. Yet as you watch the bread, you seek any comfort faith can provide. The fire crackles, its heat stinging your hands as you shift the loaf, the scent of baking bread filling the chamber. You remember the church ceremony, the priest sprinkling holy water on your head, warning of sin and duty. Faith carried you through that day and now shields you from the village's gossip, your husband's authority, and the heavy reality of your constrained life. The specter of childbirth looms. You murmur a half-remembered prayer from Sunday Mass, asking for strength. Your voice is barely audible over the crackle of the fire. You've seen women rely on faith, your mother kneeling at the village cross after a failed harvest, or Agnes muttering psalms while scrubbing pots. Joke number 1. If prayers could fix marriages, you'd be chanting until the next harvest. Your gaze drifts to the bedchamber door, where your mother-in-law's voice carries from outside, arguing about a stray goat. Faith teaches patience, but patience is elusive, especially under her watchful eye. You recall the church's promise. Endure, obey, and God will reward you. Perhaps not in this life, but the next. A thin comfort, given the village expects heirs and your bread is under scrutiny. Still, you trace the iron ring on your finger, a symbol of vows made under God's gaze, wondering if faith can soften life's harsher edges. Your husband's small acts of mercy last night, his gruff kindness, feel like faint answers to those prayers. Morning light spills into the bedchamber as you pull the loaf from the embers. Crisp, warm, and golden. Placing it on the hearth beside the wooden spoon, you feel a quiet pride. Faith has guided you through this task. You think of women's advice, church rules, and the weight of the dowry, all tied to a God who judges and shelters. You've prayed for family, rain, and sick animals. Now your prayers turn inward, for courage, for love, for survival. Joke number 2. If God is listening, this village has quite a list. Your husband's boots thud outside, and you tense, expecting him or your mother-in-law to appear. Faith advises trust, yet it is difficult when the plan involves a stranger and a village full of gossip. You glance at the prayer cord, holy water, and the cross above the bed. These are more than rituals. They are lifelines, helping you face the hearth, chores, and life ahead. Joke number 3. If faith can move mountains, you hope for just a hill or two in your marriage. You wrap the loaf in a cloth, taking time to steady your nerves, leaning on quiet prayer as the day's duties approach. The hearth grows dim, its smoky warmth fading. The golden loaf rests beside the carved wooden spoon, a reminder of your work guided by faith and women's wisdom. the straw mattress in the corner, its scratchy blanket abandoned, and the thin shift clinging to your flower-streaked skin are distant now. A faint scent from the bride's bundle lingers, a small anchor as you face the weight of marriage. Dowry meadows, church vows, and village scrutiny all press in. As morning bustle rises outside, your thoughts drift to folklore. The tales and superstitions that fill the gaps where faith and duty leave off. Whispered by village women, these stories shape your view of the wedding night and the life ahead. In medieval Europe, folklore was a living thread for peasants, weaving magic and meaning into daily life alongside church rules. By the 14th century, tales of fairies, spirits, and charms were as real as the harvest, explaining love, luck, and loss in marriages like yours. A quirky detail: some villages believed a bride should sleep with a sprig of hazel under her pillow to dream of her husband's true heart. Your mother slipped one into your hand at the feast, likely lost in the bedding chaos. Historians debate whether these tales were harmless, fanciful, or subtle resistance to church control. Sweeping ash from the hearth, you wonder which truths remain. The fire's embers glow faintly, the broom bristles scratch the floor, and you recall the bedding ceremony. The body chants, tinged with older, stranger undertones, hinting at spirits blessing or cursing the bed. Agnes, the crawling neighbor, once told you the story of a bride who you forgot to leave milk for the good folk and woke to a marriage that already felt sour. You might have laughed at the thought before, but now, in the quiet of the bedchambers, you're half tempted to check the corners for unseen eyes. Joke number 1. If fairies can ruin marriages, they gossip worse than the village. Their stories feel alive, carrying a kind of magic that balances the church's stern prayers. You glance at the door where your husband's boots last echoed and wonder if he knows these tales. The men at the mill probably traded their own stories of bewitched wives or enchanted crops. You think of the hazel sprig, the fertility posy, the red ribbon, objects blending faith and folklore into your marriage. Your mother's voice echoes in your mind, reminding you to honor the old ways alongside her prayers. She hedged her bets, trusting both God and the unseen. The village women's stories linger. Brides who won love by tying knots under moonlight, or lost it by spilling salt. Like a map, if only you could read it. You set the broom aside, leave the hearth clean, and shiver. Not entirely from the cold. Morning light streams through the shutters. Outside, your mother-in-law's sharp voice scolds a child. Folklore warns that meddling of this kind might hide changelings in disguise, and you smirk at the thought. You recall the wedding night, your husband's mercy, and wonder if a tale could explain his kindness or predict his moods. The church calls love a duty. Folklore whispers it's a spell, fragile and unpredictable. Joke number 2. If love is a charm, you hope for one that doesn't backfire. You breathe in the scent of the thyme in your shift, grounding yourself, and feel drawn to stories promising more than obedience. The loaf's crust crackles as it cools. You wrap it tighter, the nearby wooden spoon like a nod to the women's tales. Thoughts drift to the dowry, the vows, the village eyes, all woven with folklore's threads. Spirits in the fields, omens in the stars. These stories are more than fancy. They survive because they make sense of a marriage you didn't choose. You wonder if your husband has heard the tale of the miller's wife who outwitted a fairy and won a golden heart. Joke number 3. If folklore is true, you'd bargain with a sprite for a better deal. You step toward the door, the scent of time steadying you, ready to face the day with the village's tales as quiet armor against the unknown. Behind you, the hearth's dying embers, the golden loaf you baked steeped in women's wisdom and folklore, cooling beside the carved wooden spoon. The straw mattress in the corner, with its scratchy blanket, is a relic of last night's chaos. Your thin shift clings to skin dusted with flowers, the time's faint scent from your bride's bundle grounding you alongside memories of village tales, hazelnut sprigs, and fairy blessings that lent a flicker of magic to your marriage. Now, with morning bustle swelling outside, a heavier weight presses in: legacy. This marriage, tied to the dowry meadow and church vows, isn't just about you or your husband. It's about securing a family line, carrying the village's future on your shoulders. In medieval Europe, legacy was the heartbeat of marriage, especially for peasants whose children ensured the land stayed in the family and the mill kept turning. By the 14th century, producing heirs was both social and sacred duty. The church and village expected you to pass on your name, land, and survival. A curious detail: some families hung a lineage cloth, a woven strip listing ancestors above the hearth to remind couples of their duty. Your mother-in-law's hangs frayed and faded, glaring at you from the wall. Historians debate whether these cloths signified pride or subtle pressure. Touching the rough wood of the door, you feel the pressure keenly. You pause, bedchambers bright with morning sun. Glance back at the loaf, its crust a small triumph, and remember the village women's tales of brides weaving love with magic and patience. Moonlight doesn't just bring hope, it demands legacy. You recall the bedding ceremony, the chance for heirs, and realize they weren't only about children. They were about securing the miller's name, protecting your family's honor, and strengthening the village's network. Your husband's mercy last night, his quiet decision not to enforce the marriage debt, delayed this legacy, leaving both of you exposed to gossip. Joke 1. If legacy is a chain, you're already entwined in its links. You step back to the hearth, checking the loaf as its warmth fades. Your mother's voice echoes in your mind. She advised you to bend like a reed, yet she also told stories of her own mother, who bore 7 children and buried 4, all to uphold the family name. Legacy isn't just about children. It's the stories, the land, the mills, and the work you're now part of. You consider your husband, his flour-smudged face, wondering if he senses this burden too. He's the miller's son, expected to carry forward the trade, the house, and the pride. The church declares it your duty to assist him, but the village will hold you responsible if you fail. You touch the time in your shift, feeling its faint shield against pressure. A breeze slips through the bedchamber door and you hear your mother-in-law outside, her voice sharp over the clucking of a chicken. The lineage cloth hanging on the wall lists names you don't recognize, each one a ghost waiting for you to deliver. You think about the dowry, the church vows, the folklore promises, all pointing toward one outcome: a child, a name, a future. The fear of childbirth, the blood, the pain, still haunts you. But legacy adds another layer, binding your body to the village's history. Joke 2. If heirs are history, you're writing it with a quill you didn't choose. Your husband's boots crunch outside, and you tense, expecting him to enter, but the sound fades. Perhaps he's back at the mill. You recall his small kindnesses, offering help with the fire, nodding at your bread, and wonder if legacy might draw you closer. A shared purpose in this delicate dance. The village women whispered about love's slow spark, but legacy is a colder flame, burning for those yet unborn. You wrap the loaf tighter, the wooden spoon nearby, acknowledging your small victories. Joke 3. If legacy is a tapestry, you're weaving with threads you cannot see. For now, you linger by the hearth, the scent of time grounding you. You embrace the day, aware that the village's hopes for your line weigh as heavily as their stairs. The bedchamber's smoky warmth fades as the fire dies, the golden loaf a triumph of women's wisdom, wrapped carefully beside the carved spoon. The straw mattress with its scratchy blanket feels like a ghost of last night's turmoil. The thin shift clings to your flour-streaked skin, and the faint scent of time steadies you. A quiet counterpoint to the weight of legacy, the heirs, and the lineage cloth tying you to the village's future. As the morning noise grows outside, you settle into a new mindset: survival. This marriage, with its dowry meadow, church vows, and village stairs, is harsh reality, and you are learning to adapt to its relentless rhythm. In medieval Europe, survival was the lifeblood of peasant life, especially for new wives like you, managing the hearth, navigating husbands, and enduring childbirth against scarcity and scrutiny. By the 14th century, women honed practical and emotional resilience, balancing church rules, village gossip, and household demands to keep their families afloat. A curious detail: some wives carried a survival knot, a small cord tied with prayers or charms, tucked in their sleeve for strength. Your mother's advice to bend like a reed came with one, now knotted in your shift beside the time. Historians debate whether these knots were spiritual aids or symbols of grit. Yet, as you sweep the hearth's ash, you cling to their promise of endurance. The fire nearly spent, you poke at the embers, the wooden spoon beside you, a silent ally. You reflect on the past and brace for the days ahead. You arrive at the bedding ceremony, aware that survival here isn't just about heirs or bread. It's about enduring the scrutiny, the fear, and the weight of expectations. Last night, your husband's quiet mercy was a lifeline, yet your own determination is just as crucial. You've witnessed women like Agnes laugh through hardship and seen your mother negotiate fiercely for the last turnip. Their resilience now serves as your guide. Joke 1. If survival is a game, you're already learning the rules faster than a fox in a henhouse. You glance at the bedchamber door where your mother-in-law's voice lingers, scolding a neighbor's child. Her judgment of your bread, your chores, your worth hovers over you. But now you perceive it as a challenge, not a sentence. The church's vows, the dowry stakes, the folktales, they all shape this marriage, but true survival means carving your own space within it. You think of your husband, his rough kindness, his approving nod at your loaf, and wonder if he, too, is learning. The miller's son carries his own burdens, and perhaps together you're both navigating life carefully, step by step. You tighten the survival knot in your shift, a small act of defiance. The morning sun floods the bedchamber, and the village comes alive with carts, chickens, and overlapping voices. You recall the women's advice, the prayer cord, the lineage cloth, tools for enduring this world. Your fear of childbirth and the dread of gossip remain, yet you're constructing a shield, piece by piece. You've baked bread, tended the hearth, and marked small victories that stack like stones in a wall. Joke 2. If life is a storm, you're not building an ark, but you do have a solid umbrella. You lift the loaf, its weight firm in your hands, and feel quiet pride in what you've accomplished so far. Your husband's boots crunch outside. You pause, bracing for his return or your mother-in-law's next demand. Survival is meeting them both, not with rebellion, but with the steady grit you're discovering within. You think about the women's stories, all weaving a net to catch you if you falter. This marriage isn't what you imagined, but it's what you have, and you're learning to hold your ground in it. Joke 3. If survival is an art, you're painting with whatever colors you can find. You place the loaf and wooden spoon down, a nod to your growing strength, and step toward the door, ready to face the day with the mindset of a woman beginning to endure. The hearth's faint embers linger behind you, the golden loaf at your side. The straw mattress and scratchy blanket recall last night's weight. The thin shift clings to your skin. The soft scent of the bride's bundle and the survival knot in your shift anchor you as you prepare for the day. The village clamor, voices, carts, chickens, fills the air. Yet, with the sun streaming through the shutters, you pause to reflect. This marriage, with its dowry, church vows, and relentless pressures, has reshaped you. You are finding your place in the world, one quiet moment at a time. In medieval Europe, reflection was rare for peasants like you, whose lives were consumed by labor and survival. Still, moments beneath the stars allowed space to make sense of it all. By the 14th century, women bore the weight of family, faith, and community, finding strength in small acts, baking bread or tying a prayer knot. Quirky tidbit. Some wives marked their first day of marriage with a hearth vow, a silent promise to themselves to endure. Whispered over the fire, a loaf symbolized this vow, even if unspoken. Historians debate how common these rituals were, but as you touch the door, you make your own quiet pledge to keep going. The air is thick with smoke. You glance back at the loaf, the wooden spoon, the rumpled bed. Thoughts of the night, your husband's quiet mercy, the village stairs, and the church's rules form a tapestry woven from fear, duty, and faint hope. The advice of women, Agnes' practical wisdom, your mother's gentle guidance. They have all led you here. At this doorstep, you are no longer just surviving, you are beginning to stand taller. Your husband's gruff kindness, the nod at your bread, hints at a slow-growing partnership. Joke number 1. If marriage is a field, You are planting carefully. Your hand rests on the door's rough wood. Time lingers with the faint scent of the fertility posy under the bed. Outside, the village waits. Your mother-in-law's sharp words, gossip at the well. The mills grind, but you are not the same girl who hauled water 2 days ago. You have faced the bedding ceremony, the hearth, the weight of legacy, and emerged stronger. Faith, folklore, and the tales of women have shaped this moment. You claim your place, not as property, but as a woman with a spark of agency. Thoughts of the dowry, the church vows, and the survival not weaved together, solid as the loaf you baked. The door creaks as you push it open. Village sounds rush in. Children laughing, a dog barking, your mother-in-law's voice rising. You step onto the threshold, the sun warming your face, letting the moment sink in. This is your world now. The miller's house, the villager's eyes, a husband you are learning to know. You are not free, not yet, but you are learning to bend, endure, and perhaps even thrive. Joke number 2. If life's a loom, you are weaving a pattern no one else can see. You take a deep breath, grounded by time's scent, and step outside, ready to face the day with quiet resolve. Your husband is at the mill, the women are waiting, and the rhythm of the village pulls you forward. You carry the hearth vow, the unspoken promise you made, like an ember in your chest. This marriage, this life, is yours to navigate, with all its thorns and small mercies. You glance back at the bedchamber, its hearth a symbol of your first victory, and smile faintly. Joke number 3. If survival is a song, you are humming its first verse. The village stretches before you, alive and unyielding, but you are ready to walk its paths, one step at a time. As the village hum fades, slow down. Your breath softens like a breeze through a meadow. The sun climbs higher, golden light spilling over thatched roofs, warming dirt paths where children chase stray chickens. You walk, your shift brushing your legs, the scent of time lingering like a whisper. The mill's grinding hum beats steadily in the distance, and you feel the world settle around you. Its demands ease, just for a moment. Your loaf left on the hearth is a small promise kept, proof that you are finding your footing in this new life. Villagers' eyes are still there, but softened, blurred by the morning glow, giving you space to breathe. Let your shoulders relax. Worries drift like smoke from a dying fire. You are here in this moment and it is enough. Close your eyes. Let the mill's rhythm carry you into quiet, where dreams weave gently with the days. First light. Sleep now, sweet listener, wrapped in the village hum, safe in its embrace.